All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all very, very much for coming. Richard's not, I don't know. Okay, we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot for coming. I know it's not just a literary, curiosity on your part. It's a personal thing, and I appreciate it and know it. And thank you very much. So we have 40 minutes. And now probably more like 35. So I'm going to read a few passages from the book, and I'm going to talk for a bit, and that'll take about 15 minutes. And after that, then we'll take questions and comments and things like that. Okay, first I'll show the book. This is the book. This is the book. It's called Playing Till We Have to Go, A Jewish Childhood in Inner City LA. Okay, that's the cover. It's the second book I've written. The first one was, it was called No Country for Jewish Liberals, and it was about my adulthood in Israel. This is about a part of my childhood, 5 years of my childhood, from 1960 to 1965. It was a time that we lived in a lower middle class apartment project on a street called Rodeo Lane in the Crenshaw district of LA. And this was an unusually polyglot integrated area with blacks and whites and Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans. And on our street, on Rodeo Lane, in the apartment project, there were about 20 families of Holocaust survivors. My parents were unique that they were not actually survivors who had been through the camps, but they were escapees. They escaped from the Nazis in 1940 in Paris. All the others were actually Holocaust survivors who'd been through the camps. And we were like, what I think of as like a Polish Jewish mafia. And the children of some of those families became my best friends. Some of them are watching now. Some of them are even characters in the book under pseudonyms. And in the project, this little Polish Jewish mafia, we were surrounded by working class whites. And then we're just beyond the edge of the project, which was like 100 apartment buildings. Just beyond that, we were surrounded by blacks and Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans and more working class whites. And our fathers typically owned liquor stores in a poor part of town, usually the black ghetto further south LA. My father, like several other fathers of my friends, owned a liquor store in South LA. At one point, he owned 2 liquor stores. The reason our fathers bought these stores is because they were cheap. And one second, I don't want to get out of, that's a separate part. So I just wanted, the last thing I said was the last thing I said, that our fathers owned liquor stores, okay? Now I want to go on to the next part of the wrap, and that is my goal in writing this book. And my first goal was just to recreate it, because it was a magical time. And it's not just me who says it was a magical time, but everybody I grew up with over there and still know, we all agree that this was a magical time in our lives. And so that was the first reason I wanted to write the book, to recreate that, to bring it back to life, because it can't be again. It can never exist again. First of all, because of Holocaust survivors in their 40s. And second, because of the integration there. I mean, Jews don't live like this anymore in America. But there was a second reason I wanted to write it, or there was something else I had to do in writing it, because I couldn't just write anecdotes and memories and descriptions. I had to give it a story, with what's called a narrative arc, and I had to make a point. And to do that, I had to think about my childhood and what it meant. And I did that. Well, I tried to do that. I tried to think about it and put that understanding of what happened to me, what happened to us, into the book. But like I said, the main thing I wrote it for was to bring it back to life, to recreate it, to make it as vivid as possible for people reading it. And so the first passage that I'm going to read, it takes place in the middle of our street, Rodeo Lane, in the middle of the apartment project, on a long expanse of lawn that we call the mall. And where on weekend nights, there were just mobs of kids in the middle of the mall, running around, screaming, yelling, raising hell. And this is a description of one of those nights, or actually a couple of those nights. And at the time, I was in the 6th grade. I was finishing Coliseum Street Elementary School, and I was looking forward and with a bit of trepidation too, looking forward to going to Audubon Junior High School. So I'm going to read a passage just for a sec. Here we go. When I was getting ready to leave Coliseum Street School, the very name Audubon had an alluring, somewhat intimidating sound. Audubon Junior High School. It brought images of getting big, of knowing the score, of jostling girls, of meeting a bigger, rougher crowd, of hormones in the air. One night, when a bunch of us were gathered on the mall in the middle of Rodeo Lane, I said to no one in particular, "Boy, does this smell like Audubon?" What was it I smelled? It was the honeysuckle or the jasmine or whatever fragrance it was coming from the bushes. It was a too sweet smell. It was overripe. It was flagrantly sensual, which is just like my 6th grade notion of puberty and the world of adolescence that was up ahead. In a word, Audubon. Another night on the mall, the older Audubon kids were carrying on, notably Jerome Talley, who was chasing Sharon Frischman and her cousin Nancy Frischman, who were laughing and screaming. Jerome was a real moose and a fighter, known for taking no crap from even the most fearsome bloods in school. Though a good guy at heart, he once told me haplessly, "When somebody gets me mad, my teeth start chattering and I can't control myself. I just go wild." Once he got into a fight with Emil Peretz on the lawn behind Robbie Frischman's apartment and ended up sitting on top of him, pinning Emil's arms with his legs and pounding Emil in the face with his fists until everybody dragged him off. Emil couldn't help crying, and we were all pretty shaken up. It was a display of violence of a degree we weren't used to. Some of the parents came outside. "You should have cracked him over the head with a baseball bat," screamed Mrs. Levy, an American Jew who viewed Jerome as a big, violent redneck, which I suppose was true when somebody made him mad. So on this night in the mall, Sharon and Nancy come running past me, shrieking, with Jerome galumphing behind, grinning slyly. "Larry, help! Jerome's spitting on us!" shouted Nancy with gleeful hysteria. But I was too young to get the gleeful part. The girls had called on me to rescue them, and I was up to the task. I went up to Jerome and without a word, slugged him in the eye. He lurched away in pain, his hands over his wounded eye like Goliath. I don't remember what happened the rest of the night, but I do remember that the next morning, a Saturday or Sunday, I didn't want to go outside. Sitting in my 2nd floor bedroom facing the street, I was looking out the window and soon saw Jerome coming. He stood on our lawn, his right eye discolored, looked up at me, unsmiling, and crooked his finger for me to come down. I looked down at him and shook my head no. I was gallant and stupid, but not that stupid. So that's the first passage. In the book, I'm the main character. I'm the protagonist. But the best character, the most charismatic, the most dynamic character is without question my father, Emanuel M. Derfner. And like I said, like a lot of my friends' fathers, he owned a liquor store in the ghetto because it was relatively cheap. That's what the reason they bought these stores is because it was kind of cheap. And one of the reasons it was cheap was because there was a lot of crime there. There were a lot of holdups and just, a lot of violence. And a lot of the people who came into the store, were kind of hostile to seeing some white guy running the place in their neighborhood. So really the only people who would buy those stores were what you can call the strivers, the immigrant strivers, the people who just, what's the matter? Everything okay? One second. Yeah, excuse me. Thanks, Owen. So the only people who would buy them were strivers, people who didn't have a lot of money to invest and wanted a good return on their money so they could make it, so they could, climb the ladder. So that was our parents, that was our fathers. At one point, he had 2 liquor stores down there. He had one on Vermont Avenue and one on Norman Avenue. And to give you an idea, like later on, at a point roughly equidistant, or very close to equidistant between those 2 stores, is where the 1992 Rodney King riots broke out. So here's another passage I'm going to read. This is actually the first description in the book. My father padded into the liquor store carrying a case of 48 half pints of cheap Ambassador Scotch, easily on his right shoulder. He was dressed for comfort as usual. He was notification. He was dressed for comfort as usual in a pale short-sleeve shirt, gabardine trousers, and roomy orthopedic shoes. A couple of winos stood in the parking strip next to the entrance, drinking from, quote, short dogs of Gallo or Italian Swiss colony wrapped in paper bags, and nodded to him as he went inside. "Hey, Manny," said the clerk behind the counter. To Americans, Pop was Manny. To fellow Europeans, he was Meilich. "Hiya, Don," he said. "So, I hear you won the pool." He meant the pool among the clerks at his liquor store for each game of the 1963 World Series, with the money going to whoever picked the correct total score. "Yeah, I won the pool down at the sheriff's station, too," said Don. Don was a sheriff's deputy at a station farther southeast near Watts. He moonlighted at the store, it's called Handy Liquor, which was well into the South LA ghetto, but not as deep as Watts. Like all but a couple of the clerks my father hired over the years, Don was black. My father whistled. "2 pools, you lucky so-and-so. What did you do?" he said to Don in his slightly Yiddish accented baritone. "Step in your own shit?" as he ferried the case of scotch into the storage room. Don laughed, but he didn't get it, of course. Neither did I, being a young American kid. When does stepping in your own shit bring you luck? Where did this expression come from? Where did Pop hear this? It sounded like some old Polish legend about a fisherman who hadn't caught a fish in weeks, and then one morning he accidentally steps in his own shit on the way to the lake and catches 19 trout or something. And now my earthy Polish-Jewish father, a 5'6" ball of strength, comfortable in his own skin wherever he goes, makes his daily entrance at the liquor store, whistling, and passes the saying on to Don, who went and spread it through Watts. Or at least I like to think he did. Okay. One second, just wet my whistle. Okay, like I said, the book is mainly made up of anecdotes and descriptions and memories. But like I said, if I just wrote anecdotes and descriptions and memories, that's all I would have. I would have a collection of unconnected anecdotes and descriptions. And so I had to make a story out of this thing, to give it a narrative arc, to give it a point. I had to try to figure out what the whole thing meant, what those years meant and the years afterwards. And I tried to think about, so what I had to do is I had to think about that whole period and my childhood and all that in really a deeper, more rigorous way than I ever had before. And so I went about that. And I began to think about things such as, we lived in Crenshaw for 5 years. But after 5 years, actually a few months shy of 5 years, we moved to prosperous, all-white, American Jewish West LA. And I began to think about, the whole pattern over the years of American Jews, of Jewish immigrants to America, who started out like our parents as strivers, and little by little made it out of there and moved to sunnier pastures. And I also began to think about, my self-image. And my self-image, to a great extent, has been informed by those years in Crenshaw, because my self-image, meaning the self-image that I want to have, is one of, a common man, somebody who's been around, who's been exposed to the streets, who hasn't lived this sheltered, privileged life among white people all his life, I began to think about whether that self-image of mine is really based in fact, or whether it's wishful thinking. And so now, last passage I'm going to read comes from an encounter about 20 years after we left the Crenshaw area. Always regret leaving Crenshaw and moving to Beverlywood, and always be proud of that unsheltered, racially jumbled period in my life. And it would be a good while, long past the adolescent moment when I began thinking about politics and society, and immediately found myself on the left, that I would realize that we, my family, and the whole Polish-Jewish crew on Rodeo Lane, had indeed signed on to what could only be called white flight. In the early 80s, I was a reporter at City Hall for local wire service. And one day I was in the office of David Cunningham, the councilman for the district that included Crenshaw, waiting to ask him a couple of questions for a story. Cunningham was a burly, reddish-bronze, domineering, blunt-spoken man, a boss type, and extremely sensitive on racial matters. He was holding court before a couple of young black women, talking about a family that lived in his district on Virginia Road near Exposition. I spoke up. Hey, we lived right near there, over on Rodeo Lane, near Dorsey, a high school across the street from the north side of the apartments. The two women turned to me politely, Cunningham suspiciously. When did you live there, he asked. From 1960 to 64, I said. Yeah, he said with a cynical, satisfied grin. And then you left. All right, so that ends this portion of the book launch where I talk and read and everything. I kind of feel right now like I just finished my Haftorah. So now it's your turn. Ask questions, make comments, whatever you like, okay? Want to unmute everybody? My son Alon over here is the technical wizard on this because I couldn't do none of this stuff, okay? I could be talking through a Dixie cup and a thread. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. What is this? Someone, right. Oh, I'm getting message. So, anybody got a question? Anybody got a comment? I see you all. Love to all of you, you know.
Oh, I'd like to say something. This is Nikki Dana talking.
Who is this?
Nikki Dana.
Hi, Nikki. Where are you? There you are. This is Nikki Dana. I met her I'm on a Facebook group of people from Crenshaw. So I met Nikki on this Facebook group. Go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I have to say this was a very meaningful book for me as I read it. I learned about it on that Crenshaw site that we belong to. And I just felt I felt very influenced all my life because I grew up in the Crenshaw area in this very diverse population. Yeah. My parents were not part of the white flight. I remained there, went to Dorsey High School. It was, about 70% African American, 20% Asian at that point. And of the white kids, it was, mostly Jewish kids. But it's something that has followed me and influenced me all my life, being part of it. And it was a magical time. And so it was years later in the early 70s, I taught in an elementary school off of Normandy, between Slauson and Florence. And I would drive by Normandy to get to my school. And so when you mentioned the liquor store on Normandy, again, it touched me.
Normandy 83rd, yeah.
Coming full circle, yeah. So thank you so much for writing that book. Yeah, it was very wonderful. And I told my husband.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Vicki. You're done.
Larry, can I ask a question?
Hillel, how you doing? Hillel, Susie, there's Hillel.
Doing fine. Yeah, I mentioned that the old neighborhood. I'm talking about the old neighborhood in Old Tel Aviv where you used to.
Hillel, let me introduce you. Hillel knew my sister back in New York. They were in Hashomer Hatzair together, Socialist Zionist camp. I'm sorry, Hillel. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, and we also worked together at New Outlook. But I have two questions about. Of course, I'm looking forward to reading the book. But my two questions, the first one is, since I know you began actually in New York, did you write any nostalgia about New York within your life in Los Angeles? And the second question, did you make any comments in the book looking at your past and referring it to today's American reality?
Okay, three things about New York. Yeah, I go back after let's say the second chapter, I go back to New York. Actually, there's something I did leave out of the book. I remember for many years on Crenshaw, a lot of the people who came there came from New York. And they were also happy because it was warmer in LA than it was in New York. And they would all say, so do you like Los Angeles better than New York? Right? And I would say, no, I like New York better. But that was probably just me. Did I compare it to what's going on in America today? I just touched on it a little bit, the prologue. I kind of connected it to the George Floyd thing just for the sake of bringing some relevance in there. But really, no, except to say that that the life that we lived on Crenshaw is gone forever. It can't exist in America. It doesn't exist and it can't exist in America again. Basically that.
Yeah. Larry.
Thanks, Hila.
Larry, this is Eric.
Yeah.
You hear me? Eric Ritter.
Hello, Eric.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, I know, Eric. Hi, Eric. How you doing, man?
So tell me, how did you come up with the title? Because I love the title.
Thanks. It took me a hell of a long time. It took me, I was just fighting with it. And I was trying to get some sort of thing that kind of, I don't know, that touched on blacks and Jews or some sort of, clash in the title to give it some kind of friction. And it just wasn't happening. Finally, I said, forget the head stuff and just, what kind of vibe do you get? What kind of vibe do you get from the story? What's the image that you have? And I had an image of, I was at a little girl's house in the apartments. She was a friend of mine. I was over there with my parents. My parents went to visit her parents, and I loved playing with her. But at some point, my parents said we have to leave, and that was sort of the image in my head. It was an image of twilight, of something ending, So playing till we have to go. We had a great time. And then we had to go. And we didn't choose it. It wasn't us who chose it. It was our parents who chose for us to go. And I say that for me, it was terrible. I hated where we moved to West LA. I hated it. I had a great time over there. It was a terrible mistake where we moved. We could have moved. I go into that in depth, but yeah. So that's where I got the title there.
Excellent.
Can I comment, Larry? This is Jeff Burrell.
Yeah. Who is this?
Jeff Burrell.
Where are you?
I'm next to you here, but I'm somewhere.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
Hi. I wanted to comment.
Go ahead.
There may be the lack of the physicality as you described, but there certainly continues to be, to this very day, an emotional connection for many of us. Nikki, I think, would speak for this, and Mark Passon somewhere there. We're involved almost on a near daily basis to this day, about 30 to 35 people who grew up in the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw neighborhood. And we share experiences that we all are going through today, but also reminiscences of what our experience was back in those days that you describe apparently in your book. So there's actually was something really considerably valuable in this experience that has remained with all of us. And so I see other friends. My old next door neighbor, Janet, is over there, and we've known each other since 1950, and we're still friends. We grew up in the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw area, and I see Jack Goatbarb, who Jack and Sherry. So we're all still connected because of that common experience we had. And also, I just want to comment, my uncle owned a grocery store on Imperial and Avalon in that area of South Central LA. And he too had that same kind of way of making a living. That's what he did. So,
Imperial and Avalon? Imperial and Avalon?
Yeah, Imperial Highway. I think Avalon crossed over it, yeah.
Avalon, that was ground zero in the Watts riots. Was he out of there by then, or did the store burn down?
No, he was burned down, and then he rebuilt. And
wow.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, thank you,
Larry.
Your Zoom call.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Susie.
Hi, Susie. How you doing? This is Susan Ritter. This is Eric.
Yes, yeah, 17, but I'm Susie Ritter. I just wanted to say the title reminded me also how I never wanted to leave the area, but at night when we played, I never wanted to go home. Yeah. I never wanted to leave the mall. That's what the title reminded me of, and I wanted to share that. And I loved Nanny, and all I can think about is orthopedic shoes and just the immense. It was larger than life. So a beautiful tribute to your dad.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Larry, it's Arthur.
Very much. Yeah.
It's Arthur.
Where are you?
One of the Rodeo names.
Hi, Arthur. How you doing?
Good.
No, this is Arthur. I knew him even before I knew you, Jack. I knew Arthur from the ages of 0 to 8 in New York, along with Richard, who I can't see here. But yeah, we were buddies in New York before we came out to LA.
So, Larry, as you reflected on your experience in California, in LA, and I always think of the comments that people made about Nathan Glazer's book, Beyond the Melting Pot, because there was always a belief that
Yeah.
it's a misnomer. There was never a melting pot, because a melting pot just means everybody just becomes as one. So when you
Right.
reflect on that period and the coexistence, I mean, how would you describe it? Is that something that you particularly value that today is lost, that we're too segmented?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, yeah, it was not a melting pot. And that's sort of the whole point, that we were not so integrated. In fact, our apartment project was all white. It was all whites. And that couldn't have been a coincidence. Okay. And at school, we all played at school and everything, but how much contact did we have at home? I in the book, I say I had 3 Black friends, you know, in all that time who I ever visited their house or they came to mine. You know, I think from what I hear, also the Asians, the Japanese, and the Chinese were also very insular. So I think it was maybe deceptively integrated. It was, on the whole, it was integrated, and there certainly was some integration. You know, our friend France, you know, I write about that stuff, but I think it was a lot of deceptions. I think maybe you might want to call it, would it be polyglot or something, but not really a melting pot. Not really a melting pot. Running out of time. We moved the 40 minutes up. All right. Yeah.
It's Steve in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's Steve in San Francisco.
Where are you? Hang on. Hey, Steve, how you doing? You're in the book too.
Well, I want to say it's intuitive, it's profound, it's perceptive, it makes you feel, it's right up there with the Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And descriptions of your father are amazing. And I know, as one of his frequent arm wrestling partners, I'd just like to say that I would like to give him a little credit for moving to West LA, because if he hadn't done that, I would not have met one of the great people and one of the great writers and one of the great friends of all time. So give Manny a little credit for a decision that he made that he might not have agreed with.
Amen.
Yeah, that's my friend Steve. That's our friend Steve. I mentioned him as one of the two good people I met in West LA. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Larry, hey, what's up? It's Zach Ritter. How you doing?
Hey Zach, how you doing?
Good. I'm curious to have a generational question here. You know, I was raised by my father, who was very influenced by being in a Black and Jewish and Japanese neighborhood. And I also went to high school with a multiracial, multi-class mix. And I learned that we have like a responsibility to be in communities and to give back and do other stuff because I had this childhood. You're talking about like white flight and some of the kind of the nostalgia that was there, but then some of the guilt that comes later on of decisions that you didn't even make, right? That our parents made for us.
Right,
so
right.
What's maybe because some of the responsibility about being Jewish in this, Black Lives Matter moment and just this strange racial soup that we have going on both in America and Israel.
You say what I think we got to do?
Well, just like, because you,
Zach.
Yes, because you captured this moment.
Listen, yeah. Well, it's not really a political book. It's not. I don't want to make any pronouncements about what we should do and stuff. I really didn't want to do that. All I wanted, in fact, in a sense, the answer, like I said, it can't be. That life, I don't think, can be recreated. Partly, obviously, because of the Holocaust survivors. People in America, especially, people are always trying to move up. Would I have wanted my parents to stay there? I think I might have wanted them to stay in the Crenshaw area. There were parts of the Crenshaw area that were good. Dorsey High, as Nikki said, was a fine school. I think there were lots of places in the Crenshaw area that we could have stayed, But I'll tell you, the place where we live, Rodeo Lane, the apartments there are now infamous. They're infamous for gang violence. I went back there with my sister and my brother last year. There are bars on top of bars over there. Audubon Junior High School is now, I saw it's in the lowest decile in the city for English and math proficiency. So how long we could have stayed there, I don't know. We could have stayed someplace in the Crenshaw area. We sure as hell couldn't have stayed over there. But I think there were better there were more. There's an area, I write about this in the book. There's an area in West LA, you know, that's where you go to Hamilton High School, which is a very good school, and you have a house, single family houses, but it was integrated. There were blacks there, there were whites there. I wish to hell we would have moved there. I wish my parents would have moved there. It would have been a hell of a lot better. That's about what I can say at this point. As far as what to do forward, I don't know. Back there, all I can do is think about, you know, things might have been different. Hey,
can I throw something in here? Can I throw something in here?
Yeah, please.
This is Jay. I also grew up in the Crenshaw area, but a little bit farther on.
This is Jay.
Hi.
Fire away.
I would talk about integration, which is very important. I think it's interesting to know that the people who I went to Audubon with, which I guess we finished in something like 65, still are together. They have a feeling of being integration when there was such a thing as integration. But the point I'd like to make is something slightly different. Crenshaw and particularly Leimert Park were very important centers of black culture. And I don't think it's known enough when people talk about American jazz. They're important. New York is obviously the place. Philadelphia has lots of important people. Los Angeles jazz from Leimert Park was a very, very significant part of black culture. And I have to admit, even though I finished Dorsey, I didn't really experience that part. There was a Sun Ra concert from Dorsey, which I was able to get to, so I have some contact. But as important as Crenshaw is to integration, I think we also have to understand it was important in another way also, which doesn't have to do with the whites who may have moved out. And my mother only moved away when she was in her late 80s already. And I haven't read the book yet, so.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jim. Thanks a lot.
I wanted to say something about the book, and this is Nikki talking. I consider it this book that you read, Playing Till We Have to Go. I consider it a prequel to your first book. Because to me, I found it very advantageous that I read your second book first and then read your first book second. and because it shows how you evolved.
Yeah. Thanks, Nikki. Yeah.
Here.
Hey, Larry, it's
yes.
Jack Goldfarb, one of the gang. I just have
Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Good. I just have a comment on the title as well, because it has sort of dual significance for me. First of all, the first significance is I remember those summer nights when none of us wanted to go home, and we wanted to keep playing into late hours of the night until we used to get in trouble with our parents. But also significant for me was that we were one of the last families to move out of there, more because of dire, I think, financial circumstances than anything else. So I completed my education at Dorsey, unlike the rest of our gang who moved on. And what that meant to me was when all of you were moving out, my brothers and sisters, playtime was over for me too, because all of you were gone. So it was a very challenging time for me. So it was nice when I moved into the area to rekindle all those relationships, although by then we'd all changed. Also, what's significant, I think, about our growing up is I agree with the woman who spoke a moment ago that it is a prequel to your book was a prequel. And the reason is because we grew up in a challenging place that developed sensitivities that other people might not have had. And as a consequence of that, I think we all became very liberal in our ways to try to help society because we saw some of the ills in society. So that's just a comment from one of the gang. I've read 2/3 of the book, and I've loved every moment of it. And it was a magical time for all of us.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Larry, it's Ivan.
Hey, Ivan, how you doing? How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you? Hey, Larry,
Yeah,
what do you
Ivan,
want your sons, nieces, and nephews to take away from your book?
Good question.
Good, yeah.
It's a very good question. I think I want them to know. I think the main thing I want is for them to know this stuff, because it's about their family. In the case of my sons, it's about their grandfather who they never knew. It's about their grandmother who my oldest son Alon knew just for a little while, and Gilad didn't know at all. I'd like them to know that. The family history, also going back to Poland. I mean, I go back to Poland and New York. So the main thing I want for them is just to know this stuff, to know part of their roots, let's say. Beyond that, like I said, I have no political statement or message in the book. I would say, I hope if my kids can ever find something that in some way approaches something, some element of what we had over there, that'd be great. And if they can find it, or their kids find it someday, it's like a paradise lost, But mainly I want them to know. I just want them to know what came before them. Thanks, Simon. Good question.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Larry, it's Ita.
Hello,
Larry?
Ita. How you doing? How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you from New Jersey, though, not from Jerusalem. So, hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up very differently.
Yeah.
Although my father was a refugee, but very, very differently. And I think that what helped me so much to connect to what you said, to what you wrote, is something you wrote at the very beginning, which is that you use the words that we used. And you don't take this postmodern attitude of words that maybe aren't so okay now. I mean, you even use
that's right.
word. You don't take the position of, I can't say it now, even though I said it then, which often makes things that look back very unreal. Because I would read it, and there are things that do that, and I read them and I say, but we didn't think that way. That wasn't part of a consciousness.
That's right.
For
Yeah.
Good
that's
and
right.
for bad.
Yeah.
And there was things that we did that I thought it was innocent. They may not have been, at least for me, badly or racistly motivated. That doesn't mean that they weren't racist. And you don't get into that. You just present what was. And in that way, it becomes so easy to identify with an experience that in some ways resembles some things I experienced. But I grew up in the suburbs. I mean, the suburbs of New Jersey, which that's a whole different story. But so I wanted to appreciate your courage for that, because I don't think everybody feels safe doing that. You have to use words. Dumping the present on the past is a real problem. Judging the past by today's standards. And you didn't do that. And I really wanted to thank you both, as I said, for the experience and for the courage.
Oh, thank you, Ita. Thanks for noticing that. That was not an accident. That was something very deliberate in my head. I was aware of everything I was writing. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yes, Salon. I'm sorry, what? Who?
Gabriel wants to ask.
Gabriel, where are you? There you are. Hey, Gabriel.
All the best. Nice to see you.
Hey, this is Gabriel. He wrote one. Great to see you, man. Great to see you, man.
Looking good. Hey,
Gabriel wrote one of the blurbs. He wrote the best blurb I've got. The best.
My pleasure. And
go ahead, Gabe.
Listen, I wasn't there back in the day, so I want to ask you about the writing itself, which I love, and the reading today, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Really made something clear to me. You mentioned a narrative arc earlier, and a narrative is important. Something else that great literature often has is a voice, like Salinger's Holden Caulfield. Whether we remember everything that happened to Holden, that voice we can't forget. And that's true of your writing. That's how we met, because I disagreed with everything in your first book, but I loved the voice, and I had to meet the author. I had to meet the man with that voice. Can you say something, because you addressed narrative? How do you get that voice across on the page? Because here's my point. When I heard it today, it sounded just like it did when I read it.
Oh, you said, thanks. You talk about how do I get the reading voice?
Voice. No,
how do I get that reading?
Because this is a struggle for a lot of people in writing to do. It is not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't mean to ask you about how you just sounded like you, but you sound like you on page, and that is not an easy thing to do. You were self-conscious about the narrative. Does the voice just flow out of you? I mean, this is not an easy
The voice. No. It's wow. Okay, this is an exaggeration. This is not the way I write. But Amos Oz, and believe me, I ain't comparing. No, it is just a point. It's something he once said, which I think is an exaggeration. It's an exaggeration to describe how I write. Just something to what he said. He said he spends the first 4 hours of the day working on a paragraph. First 4 hours of the day to write one paragraph. Then he has lunch. He spends the second 4 hours of the day trying to make that paragraph sound like he knocked it right off the top of his head. Okay? So, I mean, that's, like I said, exaggerate. Believe me, I don't write like that, but it's about, I don't know. I guess part of it, you just go for naturalism. You go for something. You never want to write something that sounds, stilted, that doesn't sound like you, that doesn't fit, That's all I can say is that you try to be aware of how you talk, the way you sound, and you try to stay close to that, without, like, I don't use big words when I talk. I don't use fancy words when I talk. So I try not to use them when I write, I just, basically, thank you, bro.
Larry, can I ask a question? It's Stephen Ball.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, Stephen. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Whenever you use the word ghetto, when my father used to use the word ghetto, he meant living on Jean Mance, in Montreal, which was the Jewish ghetto.
Yeah.
There wasn't a black person in sight. I can guarantee that. And I'm just wondering, when you were living in that part of LA, did you feel that you were living in a Jewish ghetto as well as being surrounded multiculturally, or was it just multicultural?
Yeah, no, I mean, the Jews, there weren't that many Jews in South LA, believe me. And there weren't that many Jews in our apartment project. The apartment project, there were about 400 apartments there. There were 425 families living there. There were about 20 Holocaust families living there, a handful, a smattering of other Jews. But we were a tiny minority. Jews, both in that apartment project and certainly in South LA, we were a tiny little minority, but we didn't live in a ghetto. It wasn't a ghetto. I mean, you could say we were a tightly knit group. We were a very tightly knit group, but we weren't. No, I never felt like I was living in a ghetto. No.
Interesting. Okay.
And the term ghetto in those days referred to poor black neighborhoods. That was the ghetto. That's where the word came.
That was the point. The other point that I was making. Yeah. So, well, I tell you what. If nobody else, Susie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say your writing was so heartfelt. It was so heartfelt, and it just came across. Everything that you said reminded me of what it was really like then, and I certainly didn't feel like I was living in a ghetto. We were a family, and it really was a miraculous time. It really was a wonderful time in our lives, and you really, really. And I read the whole book, and you really conveyed that. So I just wanted to share that. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. And I'm sorry. I hope I don't embarrass you, but I have to tell everybody, my dear mother, she told me of Susan, says, the goodness shines out of her eyes. So thank you very much. I love you. Love you.
Larry. Love you.
Armand, hi. This is my brother, Armand. Armand.
I just wanted to say one
I guess.
thing.
Is this Janet?
Yes, thank you.
Who's talking?
I'm
Janet. Okay, I'm sorry.
I grew up
Go ahead.
with Jeff Perel in Baldwin Hills.
I'm sorry. Yeah, right.
I found it to be one of the best experiences of my life, getting an understanding of multicultural understanding. We in junior high at Audubon, we were going to a lot of interracial parties. We were all trying to figure each other out, and that was very rich. We still live in LA. We don't live far from Baldwin Hills. We still go over there to Lamert Park. We were just there. We listen to jazz. There's a famous Black bookstore we go to. There's some eateries over there. So we still go and participate, and it's changing yet again. My husband, Ron, graduated from Dorsey, and he was a part of being in the Watts Riot in '65. Revolt, as we like to say, as the National Guardsman, who he just wrote a book called The Buddy Plan, no the. And it was all about his experience in the Crenshaw district, being a part of the Watts Revolt.
So I can't wait to read your book, Larry, because it sounds like...
I'm going to check out the Buddy. I'm going to check that. I'm going to check out your book. I'm definitely going to check out that book.
Yeah, I'm definitely...
And Janet, all I can say is I envy you.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Armand wanted to ask a question.
Armand, I'm sorry. Armand, you wanted to say something. Armand?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is my brother, Armand.
Hi. I just wanted to say two things.
Go ahead, Armand.
I wanted to say two things. First of all, you and I in many phone calls struggled. That is, you struggled with the title, and I would listen to all the titles, and they sounded better, worse, or whatever. This title, which you never tried out on me, is a triumph. It sends the book into a beautiful place. And the second thing is that what you describe as that golden time, I think is really timeless, because it reminds me of my time as a little boy in the Bronx. And I have a feeling that it would remind people of pre-World War II Europe, with kids growing up, Jewish kids growing up in Vienna or Warsaw or other cities. It's just timeless and universal. Thank you so much, Larry.
Larry, can I chime in again?
Thanks,
Larry?
Who is this?
Someplace.
You hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to
who's up?
It's Jeff Perel again.
Susie, I'll get you right after the spring.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
Hi, Larry. I just wanted to say that I think you described, I would describe the area you grew up as kind of a separate enclave of what my experience was with respect to the issue or question of it being a ghetto. It wasn't so much a ghetto, but it was clearly a Jewish neighborhood that we grew up in, that Baldwin Hills, Crenshaw area. There was a thriving synagogue, congregation of B'nai Israel, with hundreds and hundreds of members. And there were lots of opportunities as a Jewish kid growing up then, to the point that I don't think I had a non-Jewish friend, or at least the non-Jewish friend never came over the house. And so I probably had a different experience than you did, or a different perception of what was going on at the time. And there were a lot of survivor families as well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Susie, go ahead. Suze? This is my sister, Susie. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Hi, Larry.
Hi, Susie. Hi.
And hi to Alon. Alon sent me a greeting, and Alon, I greet you in return. And Gilad, if he's there or
Hi,
not.
Susie.
Hi, Alon.
He's watching too.
Okay. So what I wanted to say was I read your book and I loved it. I just loved it. Loved it. But on the other hand, I was thinking, gee, maybe I love it because my brother wrote it. But what I found out was everybody I know who's read it besides me has loved it. It's a whole different thing from, oh, it's a great book, it's nice, I liked it, blah, blah, blah. No, they loved it. And I'm so happy about that.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
Okay.
Which picture?
All right. Yeah.
Which one are you?
What?
Are you one of these?
I'm not in it.
Larry?
No, I'm not. Oh, yeah, by the way, yes.
How do I get in?
Who's talking?
It's Helene.
Hi, Helene. How are you? Helene's in the book, too. Half the people I've talked to tonight are in the book. They're characters. Go ahead. Helene.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to get in. I kept waving and trying to, but I couldn't get in.
Yeah. Here you go.
There have been so many people who spoke that I wanted to respond right after they spoke, and now I've forgotten who was who and all that. But I agree with everything everybody said, including your sister. Love. I found the book. I'm about 2/3 finished also, and I found it extremely evocative, as you can imagine, having grown up with you all in at Chesapeake. I'm the oldest, so I had some different experiences, and a lot of the boy stuff you talk about I had no idea about. But Chesapeake, living there, as you, I think, Larry, pointed out, and maybe some other people speaking, I think totally affected who we are. And having that experience of all of us living so close to each other, with the Holocaust background and whatever, I feel like all of us, even if we're not blood related, we felt like we were. We were all cousins if we weren't siblings. And everybody was our aunt or our uncle, even if there was no blood. So the Chesapeake part was one aspect, but the other was Audubon. And my closest friends to this day are the young women I met in the 7th grade at Audubon. So I'm talking over 60 years ago. And we talk about Audubon all the time and refer to all the various fun things that happened back then and how that affected our lives. Being in that mix with Blacks, Japanese, whites, and we never noticed differences. We were all friends with each other. You're right, we were not in each other's homes, but it meant nothing that somebody was not the same color or the same religion. We all played with each other. It was a beautiful time. We haven't had reunions for a while, but I don't go to Hamilton reunions. I go to Dorsey reunions because of those relationships.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It's still,
wow.
I went to one Hamilton reunion and I thought, what am I doing here? And all the other ones I went to Dorsey reunions. But thank you, Larry, for bringing all that up, and your insights are amazing. It's a beautiful book. And hi, Susie and Armand. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you. All right. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I can't thank you enough. I can't really thank you so much. I know it's been deeply affecting. I love really. I want to thank everybody who helped and was part of the book and who helped with the book is acknowledged in the book. For this Zoom, I also just want to add my wife Philippa and my son Gilad and my son Alon. Thank you so much. You knocked me out. You blew me away. Thank you. I said before I started, I said, shit, I feel like this is my Haftorah or something. There's a lot of Haftorah. All right. Okay, good night. Good night. Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
Bye, Larry.
Love you.
Bye, Larry. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Larry. Bye.
Bye, Larry.
Roses.
Bye, bye.
Larry. Bye, Valerie.
Nikki.
Yeah, I read about this. It's hard to say goodbye on Zoom, isn't it? That's right. That's right. Okay.
Nikki, are you still there?
Bye, Armin. Bye,
Nikki.
Bye.
Nikki.
Hello,
Nikki,
Armin.
are you still there?
Very nice to see you.
Are you talking to me?
Nikki, are you around?
Yeah.
I think
I'm
Nikki's
here.
I just want to
Oh.
tell Nikki when I after I moved back from Berkeley, my first school that I taught at was Hillcrest Drive.
Oh my goodness. My school was Budlong Avenue, and to make a small world, Jeff Carell, his wife, was a cousin of a colleague of mine at Budlong Avenue School.
Deborah.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah, Hillcrest was nothing like it was when we were kids.
I remember Hillcrest. I went to 54th. I was I was in the View Park area.
See, Crenshaw's bringing people together again. All right, good night, everybody. Love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.